Good morning, students. Welcome back to Introduction to Entrepreneurship lectures. So today we are going to discuss about industry and competitor analysis. So if you take our previous lessons, we have discussed a lot of things related to entrepreneurship, entrepreneur. So what is the difference between entrepreneur and an employee? And of course, we have discussed about creativity, innovation, how to identify the opportunities, right? And here we are going to talk about the industry and the competitor analysis. Okay, right. Let me discuss this with you. So basically today we will be discussing two sections here. The first one is industry analysis and the second one is about the competitor analysis. That means before you start any business, right, we have to do an industry analysis. It's because now whatever the business you start, it may be a product or the service, right? So there is an industry that you will belong. Okay. So what you need to do is you need to analyze this industry. This is a very important concern. Okay. And then of course, when you take the second part, it is about the competitor analysis, right? In competitor analysis, what we do here is we need to discuss the detailed evaluation of the firm's competitors, right? So in this lesson, actually, we are going to talk about the purpose of industry analysis, right? And the different competitive forces that determine the industry profitability, right? Then, of course, the three types of competitors that a new firm will face, right? So how they can ethically obtain information about its competitors, and of course, the reasons for completing a competitive analysis grade, right? So we'll try to cover all these objectives within this lesson, right? And let's move to discuss about industry analysis. I hope you could heard about industry, right? So for example, the people will say, this is if you take a garment factory, it belongs to apparel industry, right? Banking industry, okay? Creative industry, right? IT sector. So likewise, we use this term, right? The industry, right? So when you take industry analysis, right? So look at here. If you take the industry analysis for any business, we need to analyze the industry. This is an important concern, okay? So when you take industry analysis, here our focus should be um, how to do this, right? Because this is very important when you carry out your business functions, right? So actually, this is also a business function, okay? So when you take industry analysis, this is also a business function completed by business owners and other individuals to access the current business environment, right? So we are going to look at what is the current business environment, because this analysis is very important to take the different decisions, right? So that means because now when you take the current environment, the current business environment, so there are different concerns, okay? So when you take the business environment, right, this may have different influences, right? For example, from the political environment, of course, there is an impact, right? From the economic environment, of course, there is an impact, right? From the social environment, of course, there is an impact, okay? So what we do here is we need to look at the present industry, right, by looking at the different environmental factors, right? So we are going to analyze the different business environmental factors, okay? So just look at why do we need a industry analysis, right? So the first reason is to understand the market condition, right? So what is the condition? What is the prevailing condition within the market, right? So we can decide whether there's an increasing trend or decreasing trend. For example, just think, now if you take smartphones these days, right? So you know that day by day there is a demand for Android phones, right? But just think about the laptops. Of course, again, there's a demand, right? There's a demand day by day. This is increasing, right? Everything is like we do everything online, right? Even just think this like Joe also, we are doing it as a recording, right? So you may have a phone or a laptop to like watch this recording, right? But just think about the typewriters. What has happened? So now it has decreased, right? The demand for typewriters has decreased, right? And just think about the COVID-19, the pandemic time, right? So what has happened? During that time, actually, uh, there was a demand for masks, right? There was a demand for the sanitizers, right? But now there's a little drop for that, right? So that's what we refer as market condition. Okay. So through the industry analysis, we can understand the present market condition. Okay. We can understand the present market condition. Okay. And the next it is about predicting the performance, right? So if you belong to an industry where there's no present market condition, where there's no demand actually, then what happens, right? So you need to think about what will happen to the performance, right? Because we are starting a business for the expectation of making profits, right? Everyone needs to make some profits. So maybe in your earlier stage, you won't be able to make some profits, but at least day by day, you are targeting to increase your sales, right? And then, of course, increase the performance, right? But here, what happens is you won't be able to do that, right? So if you don't do a proper industry analysis, okay? So you need to understand this very clearly, right? So we need to have a proper industry analysis, okay? Then, of course, where to position the business, right? So we need to have market positioning within our business, right? And of course, we need to identify the threats and opportunities. Threats, what do you mean by that? Opportunities, what do you mean by that? You know the opportunities already because we have already discussed this, right? Then opportunities can avasthawa. Okay, so maybe your chances. Threats means something that may bring some harmful effects to your business activities. Both are external, right? So it's not under your control. If you take threats and opportunities, it's not under your control, right? There are some factors which are under your control, right? For example, just assume your strengths and weaknesses. Those are under your control. Like you have a talented workforce, of course, it's a strength for you, right? Just think you as an individual, you're not good in English, right? So it's a weakness, but you can improve that. That means it's something controllable, right? But threats and opportunities, it's not controllable, okay? So threats will bring some adverse effects, but opportunities will bring you some benefits. Okay. So through the industry analysis, we can identify what are the threats and opportunities. Okay. Right. Look at here. There are some examples. Right. Okay. Read this carefully before I discuss this. Go through with this carefully. right? Okay, now just look at here, right? So here you can see some different industry parameters, right? And I have included different sectors, right? The first it is about the automobile sector, then it's about the IT sales services, and then about the steel sector, right? So we'll see how this differs with differs for different industry parameters, right? So look at the first one. It's about the demand, right? So when you talk about the demand, when you take the automobile sector, of course, these days the income of the individuals affect the sales of cars, right? Because now you know that the very high tariffs are included, right? So of course the higher custom duties were there to import a vehicle, right? So of course the income of the individuals affects definitely for the amount of sales, right? The sale of cars, right? Then of course the next one, it's about the IT services, right? So when you take the IT services, here this includes low cost, right? The labor or skill shortage in the long run, right? So the cost is important, okay? And of course the skill shortage, right? So actually, like there are no enough employees to do this. This is also a problem. And of course, recently we have an impact. What is it? It's the impact of AI, the artificial intelligence on different functions. And you know that different job markets has replaced from artificial intelligence, right? Because hereafter we don't for some sectors, right? So we don't need employees for that, right? Because we have AI to do all these things, right? And of course, steel sector, right? So if you take steel sector, there can be demand and supply mismatch, right? Construction demand, right? So if you take construction demand, it may be high, likewise. So there are differences. Okay. Then the second thing, it's about the key supply drivers. When you take the key supply drivers, you can see here the automobiles. If you take the automobile sector, right? So there are some steel prices, right? So we have steel prices. Then of course, metal prices. There are some metal prices also. Okay, maybe with the aluminium, maybe with the rubber, like that. Okay, and then of course, the IT services, educated manpower at a reasonable cost. Then the steel sector, the price of the iron ore, like that, right? Then just look at the nature of the change. So to what extent there can be changes within these industries. Okay, so if you take automobile sector, it says it's moderate, right? But there can be changes with the technology, right? Then if you take IT sector, of course, high degree of change due to the technology, because you know that day by day, the technology is changing. So that means the services that you provide, definitely there are differences, right? There are changes, okay? Then of course, the steel sector, the nature of changes may be low, okay? Next, it is about the predictability. Just look at here, predictability. Then automobile sector, uh, it's high, we can predict, right? IT services, low. Steel sector, medium, right? But again, this depends with the country also, right? The predictability can depend with the country. That means with the country policies, right? So there are differences, okay? Then of course, ability to increase price ahead of inflation, right? So we can increase the price, okay? The pricing power, poor, moderate, right? So then of course, only if there is supply shortfall or else poor, right? So likewise, we need to think about the inflation, right? Because with the increase in raw materials, right, of course, there can be an increase in, there will be a, definitely, there will be an increase in price of the final product, right? Then of course, monopoly, right? If you take automobile sector, we need to look at whether there's any monopoly, right? IT services, yes or no, right? Steel sector, again, yes or no, you need to look at, right? Then of course, when it comes to the company, whether the company have a recurring revenue stream. For the automobile sector, yes, of course, yes, right? For the IT services, yes, right? For the steel sector, yes, right? So these are some examples and different industry parameters where we can compare the different industries, right? But however, there are some techniques we can use, right? So look at the first one. We can study the industry trends, right? අපි කියන්නේ ප්‍රවණතා කියලා. So what's going on with the industry, right? So for example, if you take fashion industry, what's happening right? So if you take automobile, what's happening right? So we need to understand the different trends here, right? So for that, actually, we can think about the different business trends. And of course, we have another technique where we can use. It's referred as pestle analysis. We'll see what you mean by pestle analysis a little later, right? And of course, the next one, Porter's five forces model, right? So we refer this as the Porter's five force model, right? So let's look at these things in detail, okay? Right. Just look at here. Look at here carefully. Here we are talking about studying industry trends, right? So we have political, economic, technological, and of course, socio-demographic, environmental factors, right? So we'll see how to analyze, right? So how to analyze different sources, right? I told you we can use a technique referred as pestle analysis. So we'll see what is the idea behind this, right? So just have a look. The pestle, right? Here, P stands for political environment, right? E stands for economic environment, right? S stands for social environment, right? T stands for technological environment, right? And L stands for legal environment, right? And E stands for ecological environment, right? Now, just look at here. So when you take the different factors, right? The first one is political environment, right? Second one is economic environment. Third is social environment. T means technological environment. L means legal environment. And E for ecological environment, right? So we need to look at the differences, right? So when you take P, right? So which means it's the political environment, right? Here actually how the political situation of the country will impact on the business activities. Of course, with the government rules and regulations, there is an impact, right? So with the budget proposals, of course, there is an impact, right? So there are different factors that may affect, right, with the political environment. The economic situation of the country, again, this has an impact, right? So when you take the economic environment, for example, like inflation rate, the exchange rate fluctuations, right? So there is an impact, right? The financial status of the uh, the customers, right? Of course, this has an impact, right? Then social environment, our values and beliefs, how this can affect, right? So there are differences with like how this affects, okay? Then, of course, the technological environment with the changes in the technology, right? So we need to analyze. Then, of course, the legal environment, different rules and regulations, right? And of course, the ecological environment, right? So environmentally, what are the concerns? Because every business is responsible to protect the environment, right? And of course, the customers are caring whether you're protecting the environment or not. This is an important concern. Okay. So when you take all these factors, we need to look at how this will impact on the business, right? Because these factors are uncontrollable. You have to keep in mind. Okay. Because if you take political environment, you cannot control the government. The business organization, the entrepreneur cannot control the government, but there's an impact based on their decision, right? Then, of course, the economic environment, there is an impact, right? The values and beliefs. For example, now you know that KFC is a franchise business, right? And of course, this has expanded to different countries, right? So, in addition to their mother country, right? But when they introduce their products, they are thinking about the preferences of people. For example, if you take Sri Lanka, they have many products with chicken, right? Because they know that if you take the people in Sri Lanka, they used to have chicken as their uh, one of the major meat that they eat, right? But when it comes to other countries, there are differences. When it comes to China, of course, there are differences, right? And when it comes to India, of course, there are differences, right? So all these businesses, they will look at what are the differences, right? So what are the differences with beliefs and values of people, right? Then of course the technology, you know that day by day this is increasing, improving, right? Even you know that the artificial intelligence has created a huge impact on people, right? So there is a technological environment, right? And of course the legal environment is there, okay? So because through the legal environment there are different rules and regulations, right? Environmental factors are there, right? Then of course ecological environment, right? So when you take ecological environment, this is where you find environment protection, because these days we are talking about sustainability, right? Everyone was talking about sustainability, right? And now these days, actually, sustainability is a branding concept also, because they use to have some environmental friendly practices. The business organizations, they introduce some environmental friendly practices, and with that they try to get customers' attention, right? They try to develop their brand name through that, right? Because they want to like show it to the community that okay, they are environmental conscious business, right? For example, just think Kill supermarkets. They encourage customers to bring some reusable bags. For that, actually, they give some 6 rupees discount. If you bring a reusable bag, of course, you will get a 6 rupees discount. Likewise, there are some important concerns where they try to protect the ecological environment, right? So these are the factors, right, we need to look at when you check the pestle analysis, and you can see all these factors are external to the organization. Actually, they are not internal. But if you want to know what are the internal factors, the internal factors will be your strengths and weaknesses, right? So what are the strengths of the business organization? What are the weaknesses, right? Weaknesses of the organization, right? But of course, when you take opportunities and threats, I was talking about opportunities and threats earlier also, right? If you take opportunities and threats, they are external, right? So strengths and weaknesses, of course, they are internal to the organization, but opportunities and threats, they are external, they are outside to the organization. So strengths and weaknesses we can control, but the opportunities and threats, we have a limited control. Okay, so we'll look at this in detail, right? Just give me a second.
decide to start a new business or enter a new market, they should coherently evaluate a firm's external environmental factors. A PESTLE analysis is a framework or tool used by managers to analyze and monitor the macro environmental factors that have an impact on an organization, company, or industry. PESTLE is an acronym that stands for political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal factors. Generally, the PESTLE analysis focuses on a big picture and long-term changes of firms' external environment. So let's take a closer look at each individual element in the PESTLE analysis. First, political factors. Political factors result from the processes and actions of government bodies that can influence the decisions and behaviors of firms. While political factors are located in the firm's general environment, where firms traditionally wield little influence, companies nevertheless increasingly work to shape and influence this realm. They do so by applying non-market strategies, that is, through lobbying, public relations, contributions, litigation, and more, in ways that are favorable to the firm. Besides domestic issues, political factors could also play a critical role in the arena of global trade. For example, while running for the U.S. presidency in 2016, Donald Trump expressed his disdain for many current trade agreements, promising to bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States from other nations where they had been outsourced, such as China and India. After his election, he embarked on a protectionist campaign. In early 2018, President Trump stepped up his efforts, particularly against China, threatening a substantial fine over alleged intellectual property theft and significant tariffs. The Chinese retaliated with a 25% tax on over 100 U.S. products. The U.S.-China trade war has caused economic pain on both sides, and numerous studies have found that the increased tariffs forced many American companies to accept lower profit margins, cut wages and jobs for U.S. workers, defer potential wage hikes or expansions, and raise prices for American consumers or companies. Second, economic factors. Economic factors in a firm's external environment are largely macroeconomic, affecting economy-wide phenomena. Managers need to consider how the following 5 macroeconomic factors can affect firm strategy. Number 1. Growth rates. The overall economic growth rate is a measure of the change in the amount of goods and services produced by a nation's economy. In periods of economic expansion, consumer and business demands are rising, and competition among firms frequently decreases. During economic booms, businesses expand operations to satisfy demand and are more likely to be profitable. The reverse is generally true for recessionary periods, although certain companies that focus on low-cost solutions may benefit from economic contractions because demand for their products or services rises in such times. For customers, expenditures on luxury products are often the first to be cut during recessionary periods. For instance, you might switch from a $4 venti latte at Starbucks to a $1 alternative from McDonald's. Number 2. Levels of employment. Growth rates directly affect the level of employment. In boom times, employment tends to be low and skilled human capital becomes a scarce and more expensive resource. In economic downturns, unemployment rises. As more people search for employment, skilled human capital is more abundant and wages usually fall. Number 3. Interest rates. Another key macroeconomic variable for managers to track is real interest rates, which refers to the amount that creditors are paid for use of their money and the amount that debtors pay for that use, adjusted for inflation. Low real interest rates have a direct bearing on consumer demand. When credit is cheap because interest rates are low, consumers buy homes, automobiles, computers, and vacations on credit. In turn, all of this demand fuels economic growth. During periods of low real interest rates, firms can easily borrow money to finance growth. Borrowing at lower real rates reduces the cost of capital and enhances a firm's competitiveness. However, these effects reverse when real interest rates are rising. Consumer demand slows, credit is harder to come by, and firms find it more difficult to borrow money to support operations, possibly deferring investments. Number 4. Price stability. As we know, the lack of change in price levels of goods and services is rare. Therefore, Companies will often have to deal with changing price levels, which is a direct function of the amount of money in any economy. When there is too much money in an economy, we tend to see rising prices. Indeed, a popular economic definition of inflation is too much money chasing too few goods and services. Inflation tends to go with lower economic growth. Countries such as Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, and Poland experienced periods of extremely high inflation rates in recent decades. In contrast with inflation, deflation describes a decrease in the overall price level. A sudden and pronounced drop in demand generally causes deflation, which in turn forces sellers to lower prices to motivate buyers. Deflation is also a serious threat to economic growth because it distorts expectations about the future. For example, once price levels start falling, companies will not invest in new production capacity or innovation because they expect a further decline in prices. In recent decades, the Japanese economy has been plagued with persistent deflation. Number 5. Currency exchange rates. The currency exchange rate determines how many dollars one must pay for a unit of foreign currency. It is a critical variable for any company that buys or sells products and services across national borders. For example, if the US dollar appreciates against the Chinese yuan, then firms need more yuans to buy $1. This in turn makes US exports such as Boeing aircraft, Intel chips, or Caterpillar tractors more expensive for Chinese buyers, and reduces demand for U.S. exports overall. This process reverses when the dollar depreciates against the yuan. In this scenario, the U.S. exports become more competitive in China. However, Chinese-made products such as toys, clothes, and electronics become more expensive for U.S. consumers. In summary, economic factors affecting businesses are ever-present and rarely static. Managers need to fully appreciate the power of these factors in both domestic and global markets to assess their effects on firm performance. Third,
imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
Sociocultural factors. Sociocultural factors capture a society's cultures, norms, and values. Because sociocultural factors not only are constantly in flux but also differ across groups, managers need to closely monitor such trends and consider the implications for firm strategy. In recent years, for example, a growing number of U.S. consumers have become more health conscious about what they eat. This trend led to a boom for businesses such as Chipotle, Subway, and Whole Foods. At the same time, traditional fast food companies, McDonald's and Burger King, along with grocery chains such as Albertsons and Kroger, have all had to scramble to provide healthier choices in their product offerings. Demographic trends are important sociocultural factors. These trends capture population characteristics related to age, gender, family size, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, and socioeconomic class. For example, the 2020 U.S. Census revealed that 62.1 million Americans are Hispanic, which account for 18.7% of the total population. In addition, Hispanics on average are younger and their incomes are climbing quickly. To respond to this trend, many companies such as McDonald's, AT&T, and Toyota are pouring dollars into the Spanish-language networks to promote their products and services. Another global demographic trend is that by 2050, India is expected to be the most populous nation in the world. China, the U.S., Indonesia, and Pakistan are expected to be the next 4 most populous countries in 2050. Besides the U.S., all those countries currently are still emerging economies. Their huge market size will provide numerous opportunities for companies. Fourth, technological factors. Technological factors capture the application of knowledge to create new processes and products. Major innovations in process technology include lean manufacturing, Six Sigma quality, and biotechnology. The nanotechnology revolution, which is just beginning, promises significant upheaval for a vast array of industries ranging from tiny medical devices to new age materials for earthquake-resistant buildings. Product innovations include the smartphone, computer tablets, and high-performing electric vehicles. Service innovations include social media and online search engines that respond to voice commands. If one thing seems certain, technological progress is relentless and seems to be picking up speed. Unsurprisingly, changes in the technological environment bring both opportunities and threats for companies. Given the importance of a firm's innovation strategy to competitive advantage, we will discuss the effect of technological factors in greater detail in a separate video. Fifth, environmental factors. Environmental factors involve broad environmental issues such as the natural environment, global warming, and sustainable economic growth. Organizations and the natural environment coexist in an interdependent relationship. Managing these relationships in a responsible and sustainable way directly influences the continued existence of human societies and the organizations we create. Managers can no longer separate the natural and the business worlds. They are inextricably linked. Negative examples come readily to mind, as many business organizations have contributed to the pollution of air, water, and land, as well as depletion of the world's natural resources. BP's infamous oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico destroyed fauna and flora among the U.S. shoreline from Texas to Florida. This disaster led to a decrease in fish and wildlife populations, triggered a decline in the fishery and tourism industries, and threatened the livelihood of thousands of people. It also cost BP some $50 billion and won half of its market. The relationship between organizations and the natural environment need not be adversarial. Actually, environmental factors can provide many business opportunities. For example, 260 million tons of plastic waste is generated across the globe every year, but only 16% gets recycled. The plastics industry has the opportunity to move away from a take, make, and dispose business model and adopt a circular model, which aims to eliminate waste across sectors while creating economic, societal, and environmental benefits. One promising circular process is pyrolysis, which uses heat and the absence of oxygen to reconvert plastic waste back into liquid feedstock. The benefits are economic as much as environmental, with the recycling-based profit pool estimated at $55 billion by the next decade.
Wow, look at this. 94% of people believe company culture is important to an organization.
Sixth, legal factors. Legal factors include the official outcomes of political processes as manifested in laws, mandates, regulations, and court decisions, all of which can have a direct bearing on a firm's profit potential. In fact, regulatory changes tend to affect entire industries at once. Many industries in the United States have been deregulated over the last few decades, including airlines, telecom, energy, and trucking, among others. It is worth noting that legal factors often coexist with or result from political will. Governments especially can directly affect firm performance by exerting both political pressure and legal sanctions, including court rulings and industry regulations. Consider how several European countries and the European Union apply political and legal pressure on U.S. tech companies. European targets not only include Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft, the 5 largest U.S. tech companies, but also many startups. Europe's policymakers seek to retain control over important industries ranging from transportation to the internet to ensure that profits earned in Europe by Silicon Valley firms are taxed locally. Taken together, political and legal environments can have a direct bearing on a firm's performance. Now, let's do a quick review of today's topic. A pestle analysis is a framework or tool used to analyze and monitor the macro-environmental factors that may have a profound impact on an organization's performance. This tool is especially useful when starting a new business or entering a foreign market. PESTLE is an acronym that stands for political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal factors. For managers, it is a good idea to run a pestle analysis at least every 6 months and identify changes to the external environment on a regular basis. By monitoring and responding to these changes, managers can keep their strategies fluid and current. So, what do you think about the pestle analysis? Can you apply the pestle analysis to a company or business you are interested in? Please leave your thoughts in a comment below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.
primary objective of a SWOT analysis is to help organizations develop a full awareness of all the factors involved in making a business decision. This method was created in the 1960s by Albert Humphrey from the Stanford Research Institute during a study conducted to identify why corporate planning consistently failed. Since its creation, SWOT has become one of the most practical tools for business owners to start and grow their companies. In this video, I will explain what does SWOT stand for, tips to conduct the SWOT analysis, and apply it to analyze Apple's position in the real business world. Section 1. What does SWOT stand for? SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The SWOT analysis is a technique for assessing these four aspects of a business. Let's discuss these four aspects individually. First,
watch me make a pitch deck in less than 60 seconds. First, I pick a template from Beautiful AI. They have
strengths. Strengths are things that your organization does particularly well, or in a way that distinguishes you from your competitors. Examining these areas helps you understand what's already working. You can then use the techniques that you know work in other areas that might need additional support, like improving your team's efficiency. When looking into the strengths of your organization, you can ask yourself the following questions. What unique resources do we have access to? Do we have a sustainable competitive advantage? How is our business different from our competitors? What is our unique selling proposition? Second, weaknesses. Weaknesses in SWOT refer to internal initiatives that are underperforming. It's a good idea to analyze your strengths before your weaknesses to create the baseline of success and failure. Identifying internal weaknesses provides a starting point for improving those projects. When identifying your company's weaknesses, you can ask yourself the following questions. Which initiatives are underperforming, and why? What can be improved? What resources could improve our performance? How can we catch up with the industry leaders? Third, opportunities. Opportunities refer to favorable external factors that could give an organization a competitive advantage. For example, if a country cuts tariffs, a car manufacturer can export its cars into a new market, increasing sales and market share. Since there are multiple ways to come up with opportunities, it's helpful to consider these questions before getting started. What trends might positively affect our industry? Is there talent available that we could hire? Is there a niche market that we're not currently targeting? Do our competitors have any weaknesses that we could take advantage of? Fourth, threats. Threats refer to factors that have the potential to harm an organization. Different from weaknesses, threats are external and out of your control. This can include anything from a global pandemic to a change in the competitive landscape. Here are a few questions to ask yourself to identify external threats. What changes in the industry are cause for concern? What new market trends are on the horizon? Where are our competitors outperforming us? What will happen if one of our suppliers runs out of business? Section 2. Tips to start the SWOT analysis. Here are a few tips to ensure that your SWOT analysis is done correctly. Tip 1. Use the template. It's no secret that a lot of people are visual learners, at least it doesn't hurt to outline your thoughts visually, and the 2x2 table really does the trick. Additionally, having them in a neat grid format, rather than a long list, makes it easy to compare each element. For example, your strengths are situated just above your opportunities. This makes it easier to identify any strengths that could be positively turned into opportunities. Similarly, your threats are just below your weaknesses, meaning you can see if there is a correlation between the two or there are any weaknesses in your business that you can amend to avoid them becoming threats. Tip 2. Identify goals and objectives. You can conduct 100 times of SWOT analyses, but they're only truly meaningful if you have clear goals and objectives. If you're conducting a SWOT analysis simply to better understand your business, that's also highly beneficial. However, when it comes to understanding how achievable your goals and objectives are, and the actions, precautions, and general steps you can make in reaching them, the SWOT analysis is one of the most practical methods. 3. Conduct brainstorming sessions. You might have great ideas of your own, but different people often think in different ways. Brainstorming helps to focus a wide range of ideas, giving you a greater span of knowledge and opening your business up to diverse paths. For example, brainstorming between different departments can normally bring new and interesting ideas, opinions, and insights. 4. Regularly analyze your competitors. One of the main threats most businesses face is their competitors. Most businesses regularly research and create a competitor analysis. That's why you should do the same. It's extremely critical for you to take a closer look at every move of your competitors. Those moves include but are not limited to their new products, services, marketing campaigns, pricing strategies, and new hires. Section 3. SWOT Analysis for Apple. Here, I would like to apply the SWOT framework to analyze Apple's competitive position in the real business world. Apple Incorporated is one of the most successful companies in the world. The company has been providing robust technology products and exceptional software services. Apple is headquartered in California, the US, and was founded by Steve Jobs. Apple launched its first product, Apple I computer, in 1976. Since then, Apple has grown exponentially in terms of products and services. Today, one of the most successful products of Apple is the iPhone. In the fiscal year 2021, iPhone $191 billion represent 52% of Apple's overall revenue. Apple's strengths. 1. Most valuable brand. In 2021, Apple is ranked number 1 position for the 9th consecutive year by Interbrand, with a brand value of $408 billion. Followed by Amazon, ranked at number 2 with a brand value of $249 billion, and Microsoft ranked at number 3 with a brand value of $210 billion. 2. Globally iconic. Apple is one of the most reliable companies when it comes to personalized advanced computers and smart technology devices. It has millions of loyal customers with steady increments.
Doug.
Imagine if we could tell everyone here that Liberty Mutual customizes car insurance.
3. Top technology. Apple was the first to introduce some of the most innovative products that have changed the world, such as iPods, iPhones, and iPads. Apple is still determined to build and craft better, more proficient technology devices. 4. Brand of choice. It isn't big news that Apple is a favorable brand in corporate offices, especially among creative professionals who prefer high-performance technology, such as Mac Pro or iMacs for visual design, animation, video production, and other creative work. 5. Proficient research and development. Apple puts dedication into its product designs. It consistently invests a substantial amount of money in research and development for future growth and a competitive edge every year. For example, Apple's annual research and development expenses for 2021 were $21.9 billion. 6. Expansion and services. Apple has been expanding its services portfolio for many years. For example, about 19% of Apple's annual revenue came from its services, which is the second biggest contributor to its revenue after the iPhone. Apple's services include digital content stores, streaming services, iCloud, Apple Care, and payment services, etc. Recently, Apple has introduced many new services, such as Apple TV, Apple News, Apple Card, Apple Arcade, and Apple Fitness, etc. Apple's weaknesses. 1. Expansive. Apple's products can be considered a luxury due to their premium prices. The products are priced for middle and high-income consumers. Low-income consumers can't simply afford Apple products. 2. Limited advertisement and promotions. Apple marketing relies heavily on its iconic and flagship retail stores. Because of their success, Apple does not feel the need to have excessive spending on advertisement in comparison to other big brands such as Samsung or LG. 3. Entering into area of non-competency. Apple is rapidly expanding into new services such as video content streaming, game streaming, and payment services, competing with the dominant players such as Netflix, Disney, etc. It might be entering into areas in which it lacks competencies. 4. Incompatibility with other software. When a customer buys an Apple product, they enter the Apple universe. Apple's products sometimes don't support other software or technologies, making them incompatible with other devices. Customers have to exclusively purchase Apple apps or accessories to continue using their Apple products. 5. Allegations of tracking. Tracking users undermine trust. Apple has been accused of using tracking apps in its phones, which revealed the precise location of users. Even though the latest version of Apple's phones gives users the right to decline the tracking, trust is difficult to regain once it is lost. 6. Unfair business practices. Apple is under investigation for unfair business practices after receiving payments to make Google's search engine the default search engine for its Safari web browser. Collusion between the two giants makes it difficult for rivals to enter and expand into the search engine market. Apple's opportunities. 1. Consistent customer growth. Apple has been dominating the technology sector for years. With its super high customer retention rate, Apple can always rely on the power of word of mouth to gain new customers and form new alliances. 2. Expansive distribution network. Apple Incorporated has the opportunity to expand its distribution network. Currently, the distribution network that Apple has is very limited and leaves room for minimal growth. Apple can generate higher revenue and sales if it focused on creating a new distribution network. 3. Smart wearable technology. According to Forbes, smart wearable technology will soon dominate the world. Apple has the opportunity to continue to grow beyond just the Apple Watch and AirPods into other wearable categories. 4. Develop self-driving software. The demand for autonomous is increasing rapidly. Apple has the opportunity to focus on delivering self-driving software technology instead of building an actual car like Tesla does. 5. Expanding into chip manufacturing. Apple announced that it's going to start manufacturing its own chips and semiconductors going forward, competing with Intel and Broadcom. 6. Dominating in smart speakers. Apple is dominating the market for smart speakers. The tech giant's HomePod Mini has been a massive success. According to a report by Strategy Analytics, Apple now has a 10.2% market share after selling 4 million smart speakers. Apple's threats. 1. Coronavirus outbreak. Apple is highly dependent on China for its manufacturing and supply chain. The recent events have significantly affected and disrupted its operations. In addition, about 20% of its revenue came from China.
Last year, I somehow managed taking 4 classes, being a content creator, having a social life, an internship, and being a club.
The outbreak has significantly affected and may continue to disrupt Apple's business in the coming years. 2. AirTags. While Apple's AirTags are meant to help people find frequently misplaced items using Bluetooth, the technology is also being used with malicious intent. There have been a lot of instances where criminals have used AirTags to steal cars and stalk people. 3. Counterfeits. Apple has become vulnerable to third-world countries illegally utilizing its logo to sell counterfeit products. Those counterfeit products can seriously damage Apple's prestigious brand image. 4. Competition. With the advancement in technology or the affordable price, brands like Samsung, Huawei, and Xiaomi are giving Apple tough competition. As the competition is getting stronger, Apple either has to introduce new technologies or revise its pricing policy to stay ahead of its competition. 5. Android. As we know, almost all of Apple's major competitors are using Android systems. According to StatCounter, in 2021, Android captured 72% of the global market share, while Apple has only 27%. 6. Lawsuits. Each year, Apple faces numerous lawsuits from both competitors and consumers. For example, a class action lawsuit was filed in 2017 after when Apple announced it deliberately throttled CPU performance on iPhone models, which forced its users to upgrade to newer versions prematurely. In conclusion, SWOT analysis is a method for identifying and analyzing internal strengths and weaknesses and external opportunities and threats that shape current and future operations and help develop strategic goals. SWOT analyses are not limited to companies. Individuals can also use SWOT analysis to engage in constructive introspection and form personal improvement goals. Alright, that's all for today's topic. So, what do you think about the SWOT frame?
Right, if you take those videos so y'all can see the things that I have already explained, right? So about the, the pestle analysis and of course the SWOT analysis, right? And it clearly explains how this has an impact on real business. And of course, if you take pestle analysis, there is an impact, okay? And even if you take SWOT analysis, of course, there is an impact. Right. And second, it's about the business trends, right? I hope you got an idea how we can use SWOT analysis or the personal analysis to analyze the present environment, right? And of course, what are the different trends available, right? So there are different business trends, right? So maybe some industries, they used to have the foreign labor in their manufacturing process. It's a trend, right? Some organizations, they outsource. That means they get services from another organization, right? Then some organizations they do most functions online, right? Virtual mode, right? So likewise, different business trends are there, okay? And the next, it is about how we can get information about the industry. One example is it's through trade associations. We can get information from trade associations, trade shows, right? And of course, trade journals. So these are some examples, right? And just look at this, just have a look with this given example. Right. Look at these examples, right? So if you take different industry types and the opportunities, so just look at if it is a emerging industry, right? So there are different characteristics. We need to look at whether this is emerging industry, fragmented or mature, declining, global industry. So likewise, we need to look at, okay? So just look at here. When you take emerging industries, right? So there is a change with the demand, right? There is a demand for the product or the service, right? And there are different changes, rapid changes will be there, right? And then of course, there will be first move advantage. First move advantage means when you start your business, like when you move to this particular industry for the first time, then you have the advantage. Because after that, there can be number of competitors, right? මුලින්ම මේක introduce කරන මේ product එක market එකට. Thereafter, then there can be different competitors, right? But however, you have an opportunity, you can gain the first move advantage, okay? So like, for example, Apple, right? Then of course, Microsoft. So they had this first move advantage, right? Then the fragmented industries, large number of firms approximately with equal size, right? Then mature industries, right? So slow increases in demand, right? Numerous repeat customers and limited product innovations. So now they already passed the growing stage, right? The emerging stage, and now they came to stable and they matured with a particular situation, with a particular time, right? So declining means consistently reduction in industry demand, right? There is a demand, okay? And then the next, it is about the global industries, right? So when you take global industries, significant international sales will be there. For your product or the service, there will be international sales, the sales from the foreign countries, right? So this is also an opportunity for you, okay? Right, then, yeah, I have two questions for you. You have to pick an industry, right, which is interested for you, right? So you can like think about what are the trade associations, trade shows, and trade journals associated with that industry, right? Of course, like you can look at, you can take any example and you can look at how we can use pestle analysis, SWOT analysis, because in my videos I have showed you how this is possible, right? In SWOT analysis, it clearly explains how the Apple company has the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay, so these are some few techniques we can use. But in addition, there's another remaining technique that is referred as Porter's 5-force model. Okay, so we'll look at this in detail, right? Right, now just look at here. We have different factors, right? Can you see? So if you take the first one, the threat of potential entrants, right? The second is about the bargaining power of buyers, right? Then bargaining power of suppliers, right? And of course, the threat of substitute goods and services, right? Then of course, power of complementary goods and good or service providers, right? So we'll see what you mean by this in detail, right? So look at here, the Porter's 5-force model, right? So if you take rivalry among existing competitors, right? So if you take the rivalry, right? The rivalry among existing competitors, right? So that means the present competitors. How about the present competition prevailing within the market? This is also important concern because when you enter an industry, of course, you need to look at who are the available competitors, right? And of course, with these competitors, there is a rivalry. Rivalry means there's a competition. For example, now if you take supermarkets in Sri Lanka, right? So we have Kiehl's, we have Cargill's Food City, we have Spa, right? Of course, we have like Glomark, right? Outcome, likewise, different competitors are there. Now, just as you want to, right? You want to start your own supermarket, right? And you need to look at how about their competition. In competitive analysis, we are discussing this in detail, right? So we need to look at the level of competition from existing competitors, right? So this is about the rivalry among existing competitors. Okay, I hope it's clear for you, right? Then next it is about the bargaining power of buyers, right? So when you take the bargaining power of buyers, so how many buyers are there? You need to look at. So if there are very few numbers, then the bargaining power of buyers are very high, right? So for example, now just assume from your business, there will be two buyers, two main buyers, right? So it accounts for 80% of your sales. So other customers belongs to the other 20%. But two customers, it accounts for 80% of your sales. That means if they lose from your business, if they leave from your business, if they avoid like purchasing your products, what happens to your business? There is a huge impact for your sales, right? Of course, with your profits. That means in that case, buyers has the power, okay? Because it depends, right? It depends with the number of customers, right? And of course, the size of each customer order. If you like order the high percentage of your product, of course, it has an impact, right? The differences between competitors, right? You're going to look at the differences between competitors, right? Then price sensitivity. Look at it, price sensitivity, right? Then of course, buyer's ability to substitute. You can substitute with this, right? Then of course, buyer's information availability, right? Switching cost, right? So the cost that is like cost that they need to bear when they shift from one product to another. If that is less, of course, they will shift, right? Just think about tea and coffee. You can directly switch to coffee if the tea prices are high, right? Those are substitutes on one side, but their switching cost is low, right? No need to bear a lot, that much of cost if you want to shift to coffee, right? So we refer it as its switching cost, right? So in these situations, the bargaining power of buyers are high, right? එයාලට වැඩි power එකක් දෙන බයස්ලට වැඩි power එකක්. මොකද එයාලා අපේ higher proportion එකක් purchase කරනවා, right? Price sensitivity එකක් තියෙනවා, right? Substitutes are available, right? Information is available. Then switching cost is less. In these situations, bargaining power of buyers are high. We need to be careful, okay? Then the next, it is about the bargaining power of suppliers who will provide raw materials to us, right? Again, this depends. If there are a number of suppliers available in the market, no problem. If there is a problem with one supplier, we can move to next. We can shift to next one, right? But here, if you have only one or two suppliers available within the market, so no option, right? No option. Okay, less number of suppliers. It definitely affects. Okay, then of course the uniqueness of each supplier's product, right? The company's ability to substitute, right? Can we substitute? Okay, like that, there can be an impact that may arise from the supplier's side, right? We refer this as the bargaining power of suppliers. Okay, then the threat of substitute products. Substitutes, for example, tea and coffee. If the tea prices increases, we can shift to coffee. Okay, tea and coffee. Likewise, there are number of substitutes, right? For example, food items, right? So if price of one product increases, we can shift to another product, right? So we refer them as substitute products. Okay, then you can see here, the next it is about the threat of new entrants, right? So how is it easy for new producers to enter to the market, right? So when it comes to new entrants, of course, there can be barriers to entry, right? You have already been in the market, no problem, right? Then there can be a brand loyalty with the customers, right? Customers ගේ brand loyalty එකක් තියෙන. එතකොට ඔයා හැම වෙලෙම ඔයාගේ product එකට shift, right? Then capital requirements, right? Then of course cumulative experience, right? Government policies, access to distribution channels, switching costs. Likewise, there are different factors where you need to consider, and we refer them as threat of new entrants. If there are less barriers, that means, of course, you have a threat from new entrants, right? Then new competitors la වැඩි වෙනවා කියන්නේ මොකද වෙන්නේ? Your buyers, right? Keep the nine in the market, no problem, they will buy from you. But if you have many sellers, they definitely shift from one seller to another seller, right? So we refer this as threat of new entrants. Okay, I hope you can understand. So these are the different factors we need to consider when you talk about the Porter's 5 force model. Okay, so what is the first one? Rivalry among existing competitors, right? Then the second, it's about bargaining power of buyers, right? Third, it's about the threat of substitute products, right? Fourth, it's about bargaining power of suppliers, right? It's about suppliers, right? And of course, threat of new entrants, right? So we need to look at all these factors in detail, and we refer this model as Porter's 5 forces model. What is it? It's Porter's 5 forces model, right? Hope it's clear for you, right? Then Yeah, I have given enough information from the things I have discussed already, right? Just look at, I have given an example. Automobile industry, right? So just think about automobile industry and we can do the FIFO's analysis, right? So if you take automobile industry, the threat of new entrants, right? For the automobile industry, is it, high, weak, or low? You need to think, right? The moderate. Weak industry, it's weak. Bargaining power of suppliers, it's weak. Bargaining power of buyers, moderately strong. Threat of substitutes, weak. Competitive rival in the industry, very strong. Likewise, we can look at these factors and see whether this has a higher impact, whether this has a weak or moderate. With that, we can look at the present environmental situation, right? The present environment. Okay, that is possible in this case, right? Okay, then just look at, we can do the same for airline. So you just do this at home, right? And see whether this is correct, right? Then with that, like we have ended the discussion with the industry analysis and we are shifting to competitor analysis. So now you know what is an industry, right? Industry consists of similar firms that perform similar functions, right? And we can analyze the industry through different methods like pestle, sort, and of course, Porter's five-force model. We can look at the business trends, and we have already discussed these methods in detail, right? And now we are moving to the next one. It's competitor analysis, right? So look at here the meaning of this. Just have a look with this. Right? So look at here the competitor analysis, right? So look at here, when you take competitor analysis, so competitors, what do you mean by that? That means they also sell similar type of product. If you take banks in Sri Lanka, you know there are different competitors, Commercial Bank, People's Bank, BOC, HNB, Sampath, like us, different competitors are there. Okay, supermarkets, Kills, Cargill's Food City Spa, right? Then of course, Glomark, like us, different supermarkets available, Apico, right? So when you take the competitor analysis, right? So if you take your own business, right? We need to do a detailed analysis about the firm's competition, the present competition, the present level of situation, right? And with that, it helps you to understand the positions of its major competitors and the opportunities that are available, right? So which means it helps the firms to understand the major competitors, right? And of course, what are the opportunities that are available for you, right? When you compare with your competitors, what are the opportunities available for you to offer a unique product or service to your customers? Okay, right. For that, actually, we can use the competitor analysis grid, right? As a tool for organizing the information, right? And then we can analyze about the competitors, right? But before we move to that part, we need to look at who are the competitors, right? First, we have the direct competitors, right? Direct means businesses offering identical or similar products, right? They offer the similar products, right? If you take tea, Of course, Siesta was there, right? Ceylonta was there, the different brands, right? Then Vatavalla, Lycos, there are different brands, right? Those are direct competitors. Therefore, are identical, similar product, direct competitors. Okay? Indirect competitors. Who are the substitutes? For example, if you take tea, then of course, coffee. It's a substitute, right? That is indirect competitor, right? When you take direct competitor, right, they offer identical or similar products, right? So if you take indirect competitors, they offer close substitute products, right? Then the next it is about the future competitors, right? So that means they are not yet direct or indirect, but could be at any time, right? Still, they are not your competitors, but they could be competitors in future, right? So those are referred as future competitors. These are the three categories. We need to analyze whether our competitor is a direct competitor or an indirect competitor or a future competitor. This is a must. Okay? Right. So if you take the competitive analysis grid, right? Look at here. Competitive analysis grid. Careful, read this one. Right? So just look at here. This is about the competitor analysis grid, right? And look at here, it says that it is a tool for organizing the information, right? A firm collects from its competitors, right? So yeah, the firm collects from its competitors, okay? So it helps you to face the competition. Then of course, what ideas for markets to pursue, right? Then what are the primary sources of competitive advantage? Competitive advantage means you can outperform your competitors. You can perform more than your competitors. This is important, right? So then of course, to be a viable company, a new venture must have at least one clear competitive advantage over its major competitors, right? To be a viable company, right? A new venture must have at least one clear competitive advantage over its major competitors, right? Okay, look at here the four-step analysis, right? Competitor analysis. Work out who your competitors are, right? So read this carefully. Right? You need to look at who your competitors are. Right? Then, of course, you need to find out how your competitors operate. This is also an important concern, how they operate. Right? And of course, you can compare and see how you match up. Right? How you can match up with your competitors. Right? And of course, y'all can see review and repeat. You can review and of course repeat, right? Look at this example given. Read this carefully before I explain this. Right? So look at here. Now you have some supermarkets here, right? And can you see we have taken different criteria, right? First we have Arpika, Kales, Cargills, right? So of course Laugh, right? Spa and Satus, right? And when you take these supermarkets, right? So y'all can see there are differences, right? With different aspects, right? So just look at here. The first one, it was about the price, right? When you take the price in Arpika compared to other supermarkets, how about the price? You need to look at. So it may be high, little high. The Kales, moderate. Cargills, moderate. Laugh, moderate. Spa, little high. Satas, low. Product quality, you can look at, right? High, low, or like that, right? And of course, you can look at this with product availability, right? Whether this is, or whether all the product ranges are available. Are there choices we can make? Can we find out the preferred product brands here, right? Based on that, you need to look at the product availability. Some supermarkets, all the brands are available, so you can purchase whatever the brand you like, right? But in some, it's not available like that, right? So you need to think about how to do that, right? So product availability, of course, Arpico available, Kales, Cargills, right? So, but when it comes to substances, in some cases, the most of the time it's low, right? Then accessibility, good. So how easy we can access the supermarket, right? Are there a number of outlets available, right? So if you take Kales and Cargills, of course, number of outlets available, right? Then Laugh, it's low, right? Spa also low. Satosa, some to a certain extent, but it's available, right? But accessibility, Arpico, okay, good, right? Then parking, well, how is it good or bad, right? Is it good, moderate, or low? You need to look at, right? That means the parking facilities, right? Then, of course, the service quality. You need to look at good, moderate, or low again, right? Then online delivery, yes or no? Most of the time, the Kales will deliver online, right? Cargill's also there, but little, right? Others also occasionally, but others no, right? Okay, so it depends. But of course, with the time, there can be new introductions, right? New facilities may introduce, right? But it depends. That's why I told you this is a continuous process, right? Because all the time we need to update. So maybe after another year, there are changes. Then calling online store එකක් තිබෙනවා, but now they have introduced, after another year they have introduced online store, right? So we need to look at what are the changes of our competitors, because if they make any change, of course there can be an impact for your own business, right? So that is an important concept, right? So when you do the competitor analysis, of course you need to look at what is the nature of the business, right? Then of course, what are its core strengths, right? What are its weaknesses, okay? Then of course, what are the competing products or services available, right? Then what are the target markets, market share, the level of sales, right? The business rank among the competitors, right? Look at these given examples, yeah, right? How you need to find out how your competitors operate, right? The first, it is about the nature of the business, okay? Second, what are its core strengths, right? Third, what are its weaknesses, okay? Fourth, what are the competing product or services, marketing strategies, right? In terms of scope, positioning and goals, purpose and functionality, cost, target markets, market share and level of sales, right? Business rank among the competitors, sales volume, right? What type of packaging, presentation, advertising and promotion techniques. This is also important, right? So most of the time, you know that Kills has a higher presence in the social media, right? Cargill's Food City has a higher presence compared to other. Spa also has. Likewise, we need to look at how about their advertising tools? What are their promotion techniques, right? This is also important concept, right? And of course, what delivery methods do they use, right? We need to look at the delivery methods, right? Then of course, what sort of after service support do they provide and how do they provide it, right? So what sort of after sales service support do they provide and how do they provide it? Okay, so these are important concerns, right? Okay, this is about the way how you operate, right? I hope it's clear for you. And then we look at what do you mean by competitive intelligence. So that means we need to analyze the competitors, we need to obtain information, but here this should be in an ethical way, right? So just look at, so we can obtain information by attending conferences and trade shows, right? Purchase competitors' products, right? Then of course you can study competitors' websites. You can look at their websites and see what happens right now. Okay. Then of course you can read the industry related book, magazines and websites, right? And talk to customers. This is a very important part because when you talk to your customers, it will motivate, right? So how they have motivated, how they got motivated to buy their product, right? Then of course, why they oppose your products, right? Or else maybe the competitors' products. Likewise, you can analyze all these things with this, right? So there are different sources you need to look at, okay? Right. Okay, then when you take this lesson, right, we discuss about the industry and competitor analysis, right? So if you take industry, right, I told you we have similar types of businesses, right? Like we have industry means simply a industry means group of firms produce similar products, right? And of course, if you take competitor analysis, this is detailed evaluation of firms' operations, right? So in competitor analysis, we have discussed who are the different types of competitors, right? So I told you we have direct competitors, right? We have indirect competitors, and of course, we have future competitors. Then we discuss about the sources of competitive intelligence, right? How to complete a competitive analysis, great, right? So with that, actually, we can look at who are our competitors, what are their strengths and weaknesses, how we can gain the competitive advantage by gaining some opportunities from their performance, from their strategies. Okay, so with that, we can analyze what is our competitive position also, right? So this is what we can do from competitor analysis, right? So you can use a chart like this. You can have some measurement strategies, right? So measurements like price, product quality, product availability, accessibility. So it depends with the nature of the product or the industry, right? But this is just for the supermarkets, right? But you can use some criteria for another industry, but maybe you may think about some other criteria as well, right? And then you can look at how they are, right? How the competitors are, how they perform, and what are the opportunities available for you, right? Because you can identify their weaknesses and you can catch that, right, by offering unique or additional service to your customers, right? So this is referred as competitor analysis. Great. Okay, right. Give me a second.
Digital marketing professional with life marketing. If you haven't completed a competitor analysis before, you're in for a treat. I'm going to walk you through the process, including what I ask myself, and use a fake business so that you can see how it would apply in a real situation. Let's get started. First off, what is a competitor analysis? It's exactly what it sounds like, which you're probably not surprised by. You're looking at everything that your competitor is doing, at least the stuff that you can see. This isn't really a corporate espionage situation. And you're considering how your business compares. Now, why should you bother doing a competitor analysis? There are a lot of good reasons to perform an analysis of your competitors, and it's a common step in creating a new business or starting a marketing strategy. But I feel there's a bit of confusion around what the purpose of a competitor analysis is and how to complete one. You can look into any aspect of the business that you want, and you can use a competitor analysis for a lot of planning purposes. But some of the most important reasons to perform a competitor analysis are as follows. You can identify the things that your competitor is doing correctly. This will give you an idea of what you should be doing too. We're not talking copying, we're talking inspiration. You can also identify the things your competitor is doing wrong or incorrectly. This will give you an idea of gaps in the market and needs that you can fulfill. You'll be able to identify the ways that your company, product, or service is different from your competitors and establish your value proposition. That's what you bring to the table that's unique from what anyone else does. It also gives you an idea of what to expect for growth. It allows you to see what customers are saying about them, your competitors I mean, or what questions they're asking, problems they have, or solutions that they want. Let's look at how often you should perform a competitor analysis. I'd recommend doing an in-depth analysis at least once a year, but I like to put this on my calendar to do every 6 months or so. That way I don't spend too much time doing something that's outdated or falling short of what my clients' competitors are doing. So let's get into how to perform an analysis and what I ask myself and look for. I'll show you how to do this using a made-up brand. We'll call it Morgan's Cafe. Very creative, I know. I'm including information on each step, questions to ask, and examples when they apply, and some ideas. So the first step will be to find your competitors. You need to know who else is offering something that could replace your product or your service, and these people should be in your area. And sometimes in your area means in your digital space. We call these your direct competitors, and they should be your main focus. If you don't know where to start, do what your customers would do. Search online. You can search for your business type or search keywords that you think your customers would search when they're trying to find you. You can do this on social media or on search engines, and you'll see lots of options pop up. Here's a search for coffee shops near me, showing all of the competition that Morgan's Cafe has. Next, you'll outline what your competitors do or provide. Now that you've found your competitors, take your time to browse their website, read their social media, watch their YouTube videos, and scour their blog to find out what your competitors provide. You want to know basic things like what their product or services are, what their shipping policy is, what their return policy is, etc. You also want to look through any freebies or offers that they have available to get an idea of what's going on. Next, describe how your competitors sell and does it work. It's time to look at the sales process. I recommend walking through the steps here like you're a customer. Browse products, look at the product page, add a product to your cart, and start the checkout process. Or buy an item to see the process through from start to finish, including packaging and shipping times. Look at their social media feeds, subscribe to their newsletter, and read through emails that you receive. Abandon your cart to see if you get a reminder. Search keywords online and review any ads that show up. Look at reviews and read comments for customer feedback. I'll go into each of these a little bit more later. Basically, are people engaging with the posts? Are customers leaving good reviews? Are there common complaints that you see often? Can you tell how many sales they've made? Notice that I said to describe this process. I actually write it out, full sentences, full paragraphs, make it feel fancy if you feel like it, but actually be able to describe this process as well as you would be able to describe your own.
Hey, we just helped a small business make over $1.5 million through Facebook advertising. And after managing millions of dollars in ad spend for thousands of different small businesses, we have decided to give away everything we learned to you in a special program. If you want to learn the blueprint to success,
Imagine bringing your side project to life just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation.
the best practices from some of the fastest growing companies in the world, and all of the different tools you will need, then sign up for our social ads training program today.
Next, you'll analyze your competitor pricing and how they structure the product. You browse through product pages and shopping during the last step. But now we get to go for a deeper dive. Start with the product page and pay attention to pricing while you explore. Here's what I look for specifically. How many images or videos they're using and the style of those. Is it moody? Is it on a white background? How does it feel? What is the layout of the page generally? Where is everything located? What is the copy like? Is it long, short, descriptive? Bullet points? Do they use very romantic language? What product or service information is included? What other elements are on the page, like email lists or links to blogs or other articles? Are there suggested products? Are there reviews? How do I add the product to the cart? What is the price of the product? How does it compare to other products or services that their competitors are offering? How much is shipping? Next, scour your competitor's digital marketing strategy, from paid to organic. Here's a note. You'll notice that some of these steps are overlapping with others. You're completing a number of these steps at the same time, so don't worry about keeping them strictly in the order that I'm presenting them now. A lot of them happen all at once. But you'll spend some time on your competitors' social media channels. Most businesses will list their social profiles on their website, but you can also manually search the most popular platforms for your competitors. Here's what I would list out. I would list all of my competitors and then the platforms that the company is using. I also mark down how often they're posting and what type of content they're posting. For example, carousels, videos, reels, or stories. I'll find them on search engines like Google, YouTube, and Pinterest to see what comes up. And I'm looking for paid and unpaid things here. I also like to pay attention to the time of day that they post. I'll note the average number of comments and likes, I'll also make note if they respond to comments and what the tone of those responses are. Next, I'll read customer reviews, comments, questions, and complaints. This is the time to read through reviews and comments to see what your competitors' customers are saying about them. Not only will you get to hear accounts of their experience, but you'll have a front row seat to any customer complaints or questions, which can help you when you're developing your strategy or offerings. For example, let's say that Morgan's Cafe competitors close at 3 p.m. on weekends, and customers have been leaving comments asking them to stay open later. Morgan's Cafe can adjust their hours and run an ad campaign advertising longer weekend hours to pick up some of those customers who may be looking for an afternoon caffeine fix. Next, you'll perform a SWOT analysis. The SWOT analysis is what you do at the end of all of this legwork so that you can put all the information that you've collected, combine it with specifics for your business, and make a plan for developing new marketing strategies or new products. SWOT, S-W-O-T, stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I did a full video on performing a SWOT analysis that you should check out after this. Links will be in the
Right. So it also includes some information related to how to do the competitive analysis, right? So that means you need to analyze from different perspectives the information availability and price, product quality, right? The services that they offer, after sales services, like there are a number of things you have to consider, right? So a number of things are there. And what you need to do is you have to analyze each competitor in detail, right? So with that, you can get an idea. And if there are any weaknesses, you can take them as opportunities to improve your business. Okay? Right. So this is the end of the industry and competitor analysis. So thank you very much.